I've decided to turn this to a part one, part two, because I didn't want to make it past 40 minutes. Saying that, let's finish this out though and go into it though. It says on page 197, but such were not the ideas of the intellectual and enlightened few among the Hebrews. Those are the people who are talked about who were in Ezekiel, who were committing abominations in the temples and doing certain things that were not of the one true God that Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, and Moses had brought to them. Now it says, it is certain that they possessed a knowledge of the true nature and attributes of God. No, they didn't. As the same class of men did among the other nations. So these group of few that were in the Hebrew Israelite tribe, they practiced what the other nations were doing. But remember, in Deuteronomy and Leviticus, they were absolutely told not to do what the other nations did. So are they really talking about the one true God, people? Are they really talking about the one true God? Is this what the one true God presented to these people? No. It's everything that is against the one true God of the Bible and the Torah brought to them. But let's continue. Zoroaster, Menu, Confucius, Socrates, and Plato. But their doctrines on this subject were esoteric. They did not communicate them to the people at large, but only to a favored few. Come on now, people. You need to get this through your head, what these people really telling us. They don't support the God of the Bible. They don't support the one true God. The one true God. The one that they claim that they serve. That's not the one true God. The one true God is the one God of the Bible. The God of the Torah. The God of the Pentateuch. The God of the Old Testament. The New Testament. Same one. That is the one true God. Not who these fools are talking about. And as they were communicating in Egypt and India, in Persia, and in Phoenicia, and in Greece, and Samothrace, if I'm saying that correctly, and in greater mysteries to the initiates. This is not what the one true God presented to people. Jesus said, I do not do anything in secret. He was not familiar with the esoteric side of things. I mean, of course, he knew everything because he's all-knowing. I'm not saying that, but what I'm saying is he did not familiarize himself with that because that's not what he was about. So he didn't practice those things. Of course he knew those things went on. And of course he knew that they were going to try to associate him with that. But that's not what he was about. And that's what he preached. And that's what he taught his disciples. They were not taught anything of the esoteric side. That stuff came out of Alexandria and out of Rome.
Now, this ancient religion existed before Islam. And the initiates of this religion, as we saw in Morals and Dogma, were the insiders, like Origen, for example, and the Bishop of Alexandria. These were the initiates who harbored the ancient religion. And they were Christian, so-called, but of course they were not Christian. They just propagated that for the Goyim, Catholicism. True Christianity, they fought tooth and nail and tried to eradicate, and they tried to eradicate the Word of God, as we saw, by changing it. Now, Islam arrives on the scene way after that. So the true harborers were in Christianity before they were in Islam, and they were in two places, Alexandria and Rome. Alexandria was eventually taken over by Christianity, and the bastion, the great library, was destroyed, and the final seat of the occult knowledge was in Rome.
Now it says on page 207, it is for each individual Mason to discover the secret of Masonry by reflection upon the symbols and a wise consideration and analysis of what is said and done in the work. Masonry does not inculcate her truths. She states them once and briefly, or hints them, perhaps darkly, or interposes a cloud between them eyes that would be dazzled by them. Seek and ye shall find knowledge and truth. No, you will not. My people perish for lack of knowledge is what the God of the Bible says. And this is not knowledge. This is far from it. Now we can go to page 210, and it states, the ancients thought that universal humanity acted under the influence of two opposing principles, the good and the evil, of which the good urged men toward truth, independence, and devotedness, and the evil toward falsehood, servility, and selfishness. Masonry represents the good principle and constantly wars against the evil one. We're going to find out who the evil one is. Remember what I just said to you. That was on page 210 what he said. They support the good side. They support the good principle. We're going to find out what they believe the good principle is. Don't worry, we're going to find out in a quick sec. But let's continue. We're going to go to page 220 though. And it says on page 220, believe as you may, my brother, if the universe is not to you without a God, and if man is not like the beast that perishes, but hath an immortal soul, like he said, they have a immortal soul, we welcome you among us to wear as we wear with humility and conscious of our demerits and shortcomings the title of grand elect, perfect and sublime. So they don't believe like they perish like the beast, because the Bible says, us humans, we perish like the beast. We are no different from the beast. We die the same way they died. We're going to die the same way the beast dies. We're no different. But to a Mason, his soul is immortal. He lives on after this life. But that's not the belief of what the Bible teaches, nor the Torah. That is esoteric. That is satanic philosophy. I'm bringing you guys all this because we got to really understand what is really being said. And most people have family members involved in this stuff, cousins, relatives, friends, family, loved ones, whatever the situation may be. I have family members, loved ones, other people involved in stuff like this, whether it's masonry or the occult. And I tell these people all the time, you got to come out of that. It's not true. It's not facts, and it's not what's going to bring you salvation or eternal life. It's just not. It's going to bring you total destruction. But we go to page 239, and it says, the first Hermes was the intelligence or, word of God, moved with compassion for a race living without law and wishing to teach them that they sprang from his bosom, and to point out to them the way that they should go, the books of which the first Hermes, the same with Enoch, had written on the mysteries of divine science and the sacred characters being unknown to those who lived after the flood. God sent to man Osiris and Isis, accompanied by Thoth, the incarnation of terrestrial repetition of the first Hermes, who taught men the arts, science, and ceremonies of religion, and then ascended to heaven or the moon. Osiris was the principle of good. Typhoon, like Rahman, Remain, was the principle and source of all that is evil in the moral and physical order. Like Satan of the Gnosticism, he was confounded with matter. By the way, Satan to the Gnostics was Yahweh of the Bible. But we're going to find out in a second. They're telling us in their books that the good person, the good principle, the one that they stand on the side of is Lucifer, and the evil one is the one of the Bible. And I've shown you that's what they said out of his own lips. And they saying that in their books too. He's saying that they're no different from what the book's saying.
As far as Satan, the Satan is a Sumerian word. Sumerian is not a Semitic language. The only conversion from Sumerian to a Semitic language was into the Akkadian. The Satan in Sumerian means administrator. It does not mean an evil one, a devil, or nothing like that. Enlil, who also is El, was the Satan of Earth.
I'm happy you said
so
that.
Enki, but hold on, because Enki, who is the serpent in the garden, who is correlated to the serpent in the garden, is Thoth or Hermes. So there are two separate beings. At no time have the serpent or Thoth been correlated with the Satan, because that's Enlil, who is also El and Yahweh.
And you see, that's my thing though, with Freemasonry and all this occultism. Like how you said Enlil is Yahweh, correct?
And El.
So yes. He's the bad guy. Enlil is the bad guy, and Enki is the good guy. Because I learned this also from Billy Carson.
Enlil is the bad guy, and Enki is most of the time the good guy. Sometimes Enki does some jacked up stuff.
So Enlil, i.e. Jesus, i.e. Adonai, i.e. Yahweh, he's the bad guy within the scenario, correct?
Yep.
How is this so?
Most of the time.
How can Adonai, how can Yahweh be bad when clearly
he's the one who wanted to kill off all the humans in their story?
So clearly he is a 32nd degree Freemason. And it is clearly what they teach, which is opposed to what the true belief is of the Bible. As the belief in dualism in some shape was universal, Those who held that everything emanated from God aspired to God and re-entered into God. So they believe God in everything and everything in God. Believed that among those emanations were two adverse principles of light and darkness, good and evil. This prevailed in Central Asia, yin yang by the way, in Syria, while in Egypt it assumed the form of Greek speculation. In the former, a second intellectual principle was admitted, active in its empire of darkness, audacious against the empire of light. So the Persians and Sabians understood it. In Egypt, this principle, the second principle, was matter, as the word was used by the Platonic school with its sad attributes. Blah 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 blah. I don't care about the rest. This actually says at the bottom that this resisting power is Satan, the rebellious matter that does not partake of God. And this is the bottom in the next paragraph. To many there was two principles: the unknown Father, or supreme eternal God, living in the century of the light, happy in the perfect and purity of his being. The other, eternal matter that inherits shapeless, darksome mass, which they consider as the source of all evils, the mother and dwelling place of Satan. To every Mason, the soul of man is immortal, whether it emanates from and will return to God, and what is continued mode of existence hereafter, each judges for himself. Masonry was not made to settle that, but it does believe in the immortality of the soul, though. That's what it teaches, and the Bible does not teach that, people. And it also says, at the way at the bottom, it says, it reverences all the great reformers. It sees in Moses, the lawgiver of the Jews, in Confucius, and in Zoroaster, in Jesus of Nazareth, and in the Arabian Inconolhaust, if I'm saying that correctly, great teachers of morality, eminent reformers, if no more. Jesus is no more than a reformer, a philosopher, a teacher, one of the sages, no more than that. He is not the Son of God. These people don't believe Jesus to be the Son of God. This is what they said clearly in their book. He is no more than that. And I can show you from the Lost Keys of Freemasonry, the book that I have, that he says the same thing. Melly P. Hall was the Freemason of the century during his time. The Johanssonites ascribed to St. John the foundation of their secret church, and the grand pontiffs of the sect assumed the title of Christos, anointed or consecrated, and claimed to have succeeded one another from St. John. By the way, they always use St. John all the time. You got St. John Hospital, St. John High School, St. John College, and all this other stuff. By an uninterpreted succession of pontifical powers, he who, at the period of the foundation of the Order of the Temple, claimed these imaginary prerogatives was named Theocletes, and he knew Hugues de Payens, if I'm saying that correctly. He initiated him into the mysteries and hopes for his pretended church. He seduced him by the notions of sovereign priesthood and supreme royalty, and finally designated him as the successor. Thus, the Order of the Knights of the Temple was at its very origin devoted to the cause of opposition to the tiara of Rome and the crowns of kings, and the apostolate of Kabbalist Gnosticism was vested in its chiefs. For St. John himself was the father of the Gnostics, and the current translation of his polemic against the heretical of his sect and the pagans who denied that Jesus was the Word is throughout a misinterpretation or misunderstanding, at least, of the whole spirit of that evangel. The tendencies and tenets of the order were enveloped in profound mystery, and it is externally professed the most perfect orthodoxy. The chiefs alone knew the aim of the order. Blah 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 blah. Now, also want to read, it says, to acquire influence and wealth, then to intrigue, and at need to fight to establish the Johannite or Gnostic and Kabbalist dogma were the adjunct and means proposed to the initiated brethren. The papacy and the rival monarchies, they said to them, are sold and bought in these days. And it says the Templars, like all the other secret orders and associations, had two doctrines, one concealed and reserved for the masters, which was Johannism, the other public, which was the Roman Catholic. So by the way, they taught two. One was esoteric, which is what was for the inner core, the Knights Templars, and there was the exoteric belief, which was Roman Catholicism. So people thought that they were Catholics because of what they were doing and what they were saying out publicly, which is esoteric. But in the inner court, what they were doing secretly was a different belief. That's why occultism is secret knowledge. Secret is hidden. It's hidden from the public eye. It's people have said and as this book has said. For Johannism of the adepts was the Kabbalah of the early Gnostics, generating afterward into those heretical forms which Gnosticism developed, so that even Mainz had his followers among them. Many adopted his doctrines of the two principles, the recollection of which is perpetuated by the handle of the dagger and the tessellated pavement or floor of the lodge, stupidly called indented tessel, and represented by great hanging tassels when it really means a tessellated floor. I don't really care about all that, but it's talking about the black and white checkerboard floors. You see those in many music videos. It's not a coincidence that, you guys see that stuff in there. You're seeing that stuff because these guys are Freemasons. They're just not telling you openly. They'll put it in the music video and they'll just expect you to look at it, but most people are ignorant of the subject, so they just care about the beat, the flow, the instrumental, and the lyrics. They're not listening to what's truly being said, but then also shown to them and what's being presented to them in the music video. Once you start really analyzing and breaking down the videos, you start to really understand. But
artists be too scared to stand up for something. They scared to lose their fucking house, or they scared to lose their record deal. I sold my soul to the devil. I know it's a crappy deal. Lisa came with a few toys like a Happy Meal. I'm spaced out, dog. I be on that moon talk. I wonder if God asked Mike how to moonwalk.
Hail Mary, you're a virgin, and Jesus can't save you lifestyle. Jesus can't save you lifestyle. Jesus can't save you lifestyle. Jesus can't save you life starts when the church.
Point I'm getting at with that is that the Knights Templars, we see those in video games, even movies out about them. They're messed up too. They represent something that is not of the God of the Bible. It says on page 780, the blue degrees are but the outer court or portico of the temple. Part of the symbols are displayed there to the initiate, but he is intentionally misled by false interpretations. So as we can see from earlier in part 1 of the video where I told you people are being deceived within Masonry, not those people like us who are not involved in it and not instructed within their teachings and stuff like that. Not us, but the people who are being instructed, who are entered apprentice, who are Masons themselves in the first, second, and third degrees. They're the ones being deceived. It says it right here in the book, so don't tell me otherwise. And it says, it is not intended that he shall understand them, but it is intended that he shall imagine that he understands them. Their true explication is reserved for the adepts, the princes of Masonry, the high adepts, the high elite. It's reserved for them, not for those people who are in the low degrees. You don't know nothing. You don't know who you truly serve until you get into the high grades of Masonry and the occult, period. Like I said, don't tell me otherwise. And it says, the whole body of the royal and sacerdotal order was hidden so carefully centuries since in the high degrees, as I stated before, as that is even yet impossible to solve many of the enigmas which they contain. It is well enough for the mass of those called Masons to imagine that all is contained in the blue degrees, as I just stated to you. They're deceived into thinking that, they're learning everything of all this such in these first, second, and third degree, but it's way more to it. And whose attempts to undeceive them will labor in vain, meaningless, and without any true reward violate his obligations as an adept. It is impossible to unfold to the people the conspiracy of the Templars, the Knights Templars, against the thrones and the tiara. It was impossible to expose them the doctrines of the chiefs of the order. This would have been to the initiate the multitude into the secrets of the masters, and have uplifted the veil of Isis. Recourse was therefore had to the charge of magic. Recourse was therefore had to the charge of magic, and denouncers and false witnesses were easily found. When the temporal and spiritual tyrannies unite to crush a victim, they never want for serviceable instruments. The Templars were gravely accused of spitting upon Christ and denying God at the receptions. In gross obscenities, conversations with female devils and the worship of monstrous idol. a monstrous idol talking about Baphomet, that goat that we be seeing, the goat that's in Detroit they have a statue of, the goat that is seen on many different rock stars' jerseys, the jerseys with their jackets, their clothing lines, many other different things we've seen them in, movies possibly. But it says the end of the drama is well known, and how Jacques de Molay and his fellows perished in the flames. But before his execution, the chief of the doomed order organized and instituted what afterward came to be called the occult, hermetic, or Scottish masonry. In the gloom of his prison, the Grand Master created 4 metropolitan lodges at Naples for the east, and at Edinburgh for the west, at Stockholm for the north, and at Paris for the south. The initials of his name, JBM, found in the same order in the first degrees, are but one of the many internal and cognate proofs that such was the origin of modern Freemasonry.
After 200 years of Kabbalistic magic and bloodthirsty crusades, wantonly murdering children, women, and engaging in ritualized sodomy, the French Knights Templar were rounded up, tortured, and executed. Many confessions told of the Knights Templar monks invoking evil spirits and implanting these spirits into animals such as cats. Various black magic artifacts were confiscated from castles owned by the Knights Templar, including silver caskets containing desiccated heads and skulls. The Knights Templar referred to these heads as Baphomets. They were placed at the center of a round table. Templars would then conduct a seance invoking the spirit of Lucifer to speak through the head. The most damning information exposed them as anti-Christs. Several Knights Templar confessed that the image of Jesus was spat upon and trampled during Kabbalistic rituals, a satanic tradition which is still practiced to this day at lodges of the Ordo Templi Orientis, which was once headed by Aleister Crowley. Many Knights Templar bribed their way out of prison and escaped to Scotland and the Mediterranean island of Malta. They first renamed themselves the Sovereign Knights of Malta, and then, after establishing trade routes to North America long before Christopher Columbus, they re-emerged in Scotland, calling themselves Freemasons. All versions of Freemasonry, Rosicrucianism, the Skull and Bones, the Palladian Rite of Freemasonry, Co-Masonry, Scottish Rite Masonry, the Ku Klux Klan, and Crowley's Ordo Templi Orientis are derived from the original Kabbalistic rituals of the Knights Templar. The Kabbalistic banishing ritual of the pentagram was in part performed by Queen Elizabeth II during her coronation ceremony in 1952. The ritual was based on the lesser banishing of the pentagram ritual designed by Aleister Crowley for the Golden Dawn secret society.
During the Templar trials, members of the order described how initiates were required to perform bizarre sexual rites, bestowing obscene kisses on the bodies of senior members. They confessed to spitting and trampling on the cross and denying the divinity of Jesus.
The accusations have been levelled at the Templars are extremely lurid and have always attracted, for that reason, a great deal of attention. But they are there in black and white in the trial depositions, so we have to address them and assess them.
But most shocking of all was the testimony that the Templars worshipped a sinister bearded head.
In the trials, the head was described in various different ways. Sometimes they said it had 2 heads. Sometimes brothers described it as having 4 feet. Some said it was made of silver. Some said it was made of gold.
It was rumored to be the preserved head of the first Templar Grand Master, Hugh de Payens. It was also described as a 2-faced skull or the head of an animal. Some mentioned a weird idol known as Baphomet. It's possible the word Baphomet was a corrupted pronunciation of Mohammed. If so, some have suggested this is evidence that the Templars were secret converts to Islam.
Now we at the last page that I'm about to read of this book. I'm pretty sure y'all probably tired of it now. Maybe some of y'all not, but this is what it says on page 786. It says, "The Holy Bible will remind you of your obligation." Now, I already talked about how it says in Masonry that, you know, the Christian book is for the Christian Lodge, the Hebrew Pentateuch is for the Hebrew Lodge, and the Mohammedan book for the Quran, which is the Quran, is for the, you know, the Mohammedan Lodge. But it also says that one of those books are the way that a Mason must walk and have that light. And I've already talked about how that was the Quran, because they don't accept the God of the Bible.
I was an FBI agent for 27.5 years. At the time of my retirement, I was the senior special agent in charge of the FBI Los Angeles Division. I have been qualified in the courts as an expert on cults and satanic ritual abuse. I have information from various sources that judges, law enforcement, prosecutors, attorneys, doctors, and many prominent individuals, including actors, actresses, professional football and baseball players, are involved in these type activities. If you go back 225 or 30 years ago, you have what we call the Illuminati that was established in 1776. And the goals of the Illuminati, this is all very well documented, are to take over the world. One of the best ways of taking over the world is to control people's minds and to take over a country through the control of the minds. So what's happening in America, and based on my research and my interviews with numerous individuals, is that the powers that be, the higher-ups, the people in the Illuminati, are using the satanic cults as a means and as a tool to condition individuals and to make them victims of the mind control, MK Ultra mind control program. There's probably close to 4 million practicing Satanists in the United States alone, based on my intelligence information.
If the many authors on the subject of the occult are correct, and Tony Blair has been initiated into the 33rd degree, then his pseudo-Christian morals will be compromised by the fact that devil worshippers and high-ranking Freemasons have walked through the corridors of power hand in hand for centuries. The Royal Archmasons describe their highest-ranking brothers as Grand Solicitor Generals of the Supreme Grand Chapter. There is a secret word, the name of the true Masonic God, which none are allowed to say in public. This name is Yarbulon. The Masonic God is not the same God of the Bible, which the Masons call Adonai. Yarbulon has been described by Christian minister Canon Brian Brindley as an unholy compound of the Hebrew name of God, Jehovah, with the heathen names for Baal and Osiris. The highest ranks of Freemasonry utter Yarbulon as the one sacred and mysterious name of God. Yarbulon is a tripantheon Masonic god, in part deified as the historical Baal, which the Oxford English Dictionary confirms as being a Hebrew word. Baal is the chief male deity of the Phoenician and Canaanite nations. To the tribes of the Old Testament, Baal was the devil himself.
Talk about Aleister Crowley. And he said this. He was, by the way, a Freemason too, and a known Satanist. But he says in his writing, Magic and the Theory and Practice, this serpent, Satan, is not the enemy of man. The same thing that this man is saying, dude. I'm not making this up. You can't get no more in depth than what I'm going right now. The serpent, Satan, is not the enemy of man, but he who made gods of our race, knowing good and evil. He bade know thyself and taught initiation. He is the devil of the book of Thoth. And his emblem is Baphomet, which is what the monstrous idol which the Templars worship. Now, we're going to find that out in this book if you just don't want to go off of what I just told you and what is being said right here. And it says, the androgen, who is the hieroglyphic of arcane perfection. And it also says this from Helena Blavatsky in her Secret Doctrine, Volume 2, page 377. Satan, the enemy of God, Yahweh, Adonai, is in reality the highest divine spirit. She says in her book, The Secret Doctrine, Volume 2, page 243, in this case, it is but natural, even from the dead letter standpoint, to view Satan, the serpent of Genesis, the one I've been talking about, as the real creator and benefactor, the father of spiritual mankind, for it is he who was the harbinger, of light, bright, radiant Lucifer, who opened the eyes of the automation created by Jehovah, the automation. Now, these people believe, and it's said by even Billy Carson, if I can find the video for you.
Eden was a laboratory, an outdoor laboratory. It was enclosed and had guards at the gates. It even tells you there were guards at the gates in the modern day Bible.
What do you mean?
Keep them in and keep everybody else out.
So they would put humans in a garden as if it was a laboratory to watch them grow like fruit?
They would give them times that they can mate and times that they couldn't mate. This is all written in text. They were treated like animals. When they created Adam, they created what they had hoped to be a version of a human that can replicate easily. So after they created him, they then tried to mate him with one of the existing hominids that they had modified, but it was more like a clone, and it still wasn't able to reproduce. So what they did was, in the Bible it says they took out his rib. They didn't take his rib out, they took blood out of his bone. And they took that blood, that's where the DNA is located, and they made a female clone from Adam's bone, which was Eve. So that became the most advanced female, and he was the most advanced male for Homo sapiens sapien. And they were able to then sexually mate and reproduce.
They were like mating down so they got the perfect human?
Right, that's what it was.
Wow.
But this is how they put it. And they say the serpent, Inky, who this Mason talks about and other people talk about, was the one who brought the knowledge of you could be more than this. You could be God. You can know all of this. You can know all of that. You can do this. You can do that. This is how they put it. To make the God of the Bible evil, monstrous, terrible. You know, this is how they put it. As alleged, and he who was the first to whisper in the day that ye eat thereof, ye should be as Elohim, knowing good and evil, can only be regarded in the light of a savior. So the Kabbalah is occult science itself. It is the secret theology of the initiates. Theology essentially satanic. In a word, the counter theology, our God, the God of the Christians, is the power of evil in the eyes of the Kabbalists. For them, the power of good, the real God, is Lucifer. The Kabbalah teaches magic, or the art of intercourse with spirits and supernatural beings. One cannot be a convinced Kabbalist without soon becoming a magician and devoting oneself to the practice of occultism. It also says at the bottom, some of these have been abandoned and others are only used by charlatans for the exploitation of superstitious persons, but a great many, precisely the most criminal and perverse, are observed in the hidden dens of our modern Luciferians. Now I'm going to go to page 28, and she says, throughout the universe, all Luciferian and satanic rites bear a basic similarity, because there's the difference of white magic, black magic, and all this other stuff. Theurgy is the highest degree of occultism. Necromancy is limited to the summoning of dead souls, but the theurgists of the 19th century evoke entities qualified by them as genii, angels of light, exalted spirits, spirits of fire, etc. In their meetings, sacred throughout the world, they worship Lucifer. The three mysterious letters, JBM, as we talked about in Morals and Dogma, that the common initiates see in the Masonic temples, are reproduced in the meeting rooms of the Luciferians, but they no longer mean Jachim, Boaz, or Mehabom, as with the Knights Kadosh. In theurgy, these three letters mean Jesus, Beth Lemitus, and Melchizedek. Theurgy is therefore pure Satanism. Moreover, it is important to note that Kabbalists admitted to the mysteries of theurgy never mention the word Satan. They look upon certain descendant adepts who invoke the devil under the name of Satan as heretics, whose system they call Goetti or black magic. They call their own practices theurgy or white magic, as I just stated to you. Luciferianism is white magic. Devil worship is black magic. Between these two types of devil worshippers, the Luciferian occultists and the Satanists, therefore is a difference which must not be overlooked. Luciferians never call their infernal master spirit of evil or father and creator of crime. Albert Pike even forbade the use of the word Satan under any circumstances. This is indeed a distinction between the Satanists and Luciferians. So that is the distinction between the two. It is well, moreover, to remember that Luciferian occultism is no novelty, nor must one take the mistake of confusing it with ordinary Freemasonry, the lodges of which they are only private clubs. Many authors have published books on Freemasonry, some printing the rituals, some their personal observations on certain facts, but few of these authors, having themselves passed into the occult masonry, the real masonry of the Kabbalist degrees, which is in touch with all secret societies, Masonic as well as non-Masonic, have been able to state that Luciferian occultism controls Freemasonry. Luciferianism controls Freemasonry.
Degree Mason Manly P. Hall. When the Mason learns that the key to the warrior on the block is the proper application of the dynamo living power, he has learned the mystery of his craft. The seething energies of Lucifer are in his hands, and before he may step onward and upward, he must prove his ability to properly apply this energy. Of the literally millions of Masons worldwide, how many of them are actually aware of the true meaning of the Masonic symbols? The answer is very few. Since most Masons never go past the third degree of the Blue Lodge, the rank of Master Mason, the vast majority of them never discover what they're involved in. And they never will discover what Freemasonry is all about, unless they venture into the higher levels of the Scottish Rite or the York Rite. In fact, they're not just ignorant, they're deliberately misled by their superiors in the lodge. In the words of Masonry's own authority, Albert Pike, the blue degrees are but the outer court or portico of the temple. Part of the symbols are displayed there to the initiate, but he is intentionally misled by false interpretations. It is not intended that he shall understand them, but it is intended that he shall imagine that he understands them.
Many Masons go through the first 3 degrees, become a Master Mason, and they just quit there, thinking that this is just a nice fraternal organization. And they do not realize that their own leaders have consciously lied and deceived to them because they do not want them to know the true teachings of Masonry.